Hello students, welcome to week 5 for Journ 371 Applied Journalism Production. This week we are looking at how we can use blogs as conversations with our audience members. When you look at the week 5 agenda, we're reading chapter 5. We're watching one video on media messages as well as completing 3 assignments. We have discussion board number 5 due on Friday with reply posts due on Sunday. We also have blog assignment number 4 due on Sunday. That will be your second or third entry into your blogging website, as well as blog analysis number 2 due on Sunday. As we are looking at the assignments this week, we are completing 3 things in terms of objectives. We are exploring how to nurture a community through a blog. We're examining the value of conversations with our audience and discussing the relevance of commentary in blogs. We're kind of continuing that discussion. If you look at the course level objectives identified in the syllabus, you'll see we're accomplishing objective 2.2 this week and 3.2. In our blog analysis this week, it's the same one that we've done as before. You're going to select another blog to review. You're going to spend some time looking at that blog and providing an analysis of the major themes and elements of the blog, and share how the blog utilizes concepts from the course text, as well as analyzing the strengths and weaknesses of it. If you're at all confused as to what to do with this in detail, I would review the week 4 lecture where I go over the blog analysis in detail. If you have any questions, let me know. Along with blog assignment number 4, you are now writing your 3rd entry into your blog, so this should become pretty routine. You're going to make sure you're providing me with a working link to your blog, as well as providing a headline for your blog entry, and including a photo or some type of graphic that fits within your story. Your blog post itself should be 300 to 500 words. This can be a continuation of another blog post that you've already worked on, or it can be a completely new topic. It just needs to fit within the confines of the blog that you're doing for our semester-long project. If you have any questions with this, I would go back to week 3 lecture to review how to write your blog stories, or you can reach out to me individually and I can help you via email. I'd be happy to do that. Discussion number 5 asks you to complete 3 things this week. You are going to answer the question, why do you think people are motivated to comment on a blog post? You're going to also answer, do you read comment sections or not, and explain why you do or you don't. And then you're going to review blog comments on a widely read news blog in your area. Discuss the nature of comments and how you feel they're useful, or inflammatory, intelligent, crude, thoughtful, or maybe something completely different. Primarily, you can use the blog that you're doing in your analysis this week. I'm fine with that, to look at the comments, so you don't need to find a new one. That's completely up to you. In fact, it would probably be helpful just to review some of the comments in that particular blog you're reviewing and just answering that question in discussion 5 while you're doing that assignment, or it can be completely new. It's completely up to you on that. I want to spend some time looking at how to grow and nurture the community in your blog. There's a lot in the reading that we spend time on this reading it this week, so I'm going to just give you a brief overview of it. There are 7 things to do to nurture the community. You need to link to other blogs whose topics are similar, share some of the love, get them to look at what you may be finding to be relevant, comment on blogs whose topics are similar, so then you can link them back to your blog. Keep an updated blog role on your blog, so that way you can see who is actively engaging in your community. By doing that, it will help you with that. If you recommend it's important that you list and link at least 5 to 10 of the best blogs you read at somewhere in your blog, in your About Us section, or more resources, or whatever that may be. Another way to get engagement in your blog is to end your blog posts with a question. That way you can refer them to the comments. You can include interactive features such as polls and quizzes to build engagement and nurture your community. Make sure, though, you do study your analytics. Studying the analytics will help you discover who reads and links to your blog. Publish an article in a magazine and you'll never know how many people read or thumbed through it. However, from a digital perspective, you will on your blog if you're looking at the analytics. All you can know for sure is how many copies of the magazine were printed, but you'll never know how much people interact with it. Well, we're digital, so we can go a little beyond that. Your analytics from your website will provide you with data that will help you in the essential area of looking at what people are actually doing with your links to your website, how many unique people are looking at it, that means new people each day, and how many are actually returning to it and from where they are located at. Google Analytics provides a real sophisticated way of doing this. However, if you just look at the very basic features of your blog, I have a blog myself that I keep active through WordPress. It used to be through Weebly. They have actually a lot just on those sites alone to look at that. Also, reach out to friends to ask you to help get the comment section going. So one thing that's really apparent is ask your friends, ask your family to comment on your blog so you can start to build that interactive atmosphere if you're starting from scratch, and that's completely okay. Another thing I wanted to spend some time looking at this week is different views of communication. I wanted to focus on it at this point in the term because I think as we're starting to build engagement, nurture our community, and really get our blogging going, we can kind of look at the different aspects and way we use communication in our lives. So communication views really tell us and describe which ways we use communication and how communication works and functions as a process. The transmission view is one of the most popular views related to it. It's also known as the linear view of communication. It really tells us that all communication takes place along a line. It begins with the source and it goes to a receiver, and everything is bounced back and forth on that line, and we can track all communication between those two fixed points. Communication from this perspective is viewed as a mere transmission of messages from one source to a receiver, and you're doing that in your blog. You're sending out communication through your blog, you're a source, and people are reading it, they're receiving it. This type of communication considers the transmission, though, as the focus rather than the actual communication. So according to the transmission view, we're not necessarily looking at the content of your blog, we're looking at what you're doing. You're sending communication out from a website to a reader who is reading it online in person. They're looking at the transmission of that, rather than looking at what you're actually saying to each other. So it tells us that we should consider the way in which communication takes place rather than what we're saying. And there's a lot of different theorists and things that go along with this that we could get into a lot deeper conversations related to it. However, I just want to highlight that particular view. More particularly, I want to point out the Shannon Weaver model of communication. This is one of the cornerstones when it comes to linear communication, focusing on the transmission. Shannon Weaver developed this in the 1940s, and what they told us is that, yes, we know communication takes place on a line, it's linear, and it's transmitted. We know that. It begins with the source and ends with this receiver. However, it would be foolish of us to not look at how this takes place. So it begins with the source. The source encodes a message. The message is sent, and it's then decoded into a receiver. If we look at this from a technical perspective in a blog, we're inputting words into the blog, we're pressing publish, and it's showing up on the screen. However, on the back end of that, it's all code. It's all zeros and ones. So the message is encoded, it's then decoded into readable text, and it's received by the receiver. This happens in a multitude of ways in digital formats. If we look at the blog we put on our website, then we link it to our Facebook page and it becomes a Facebook post. That message is encoded differently and decoded differently by the reader when they receive it on Facebook versus looking at it in an Instagram story or an Instagram post versus looking at it in Snapchat versus looking at it being linked to a third-party website or coming out as a newsletter. All of those methods encode the message differently and decode it differently, so the receiver receives it in more either palatable formats or in a way that they perceive to be their preference, whatever it may be. So it's important that we consider it this way. What we watch on TV may communicate to us the same thing that is projected through a computer screen, but it's encoded and decoded differently. That linear and transmitted perspective is significant in looking at how it relates to us as communicators and as humans as we receive and we breathe in communication, or we view it and breathe it in and make it part of our life, for that sense of a term. The next view of communication looks at the ritual. So there's two primary thoughts. We look at it from a transmitted perspective, a transmission, and we look at it from a ritualistic perspective, a ritual. The ritualistic view of communication tells us that communication is not about the impartations of messages that are sent between a sender and receiver. In fact, this notion could care less about how we transmit it. It could throws out the linear perspective altogether. It says, you know what, it doesn't matter how you communicate the message, how you get it out there. I don't care about the source and the receiver and it's sent across this line, or if it's bounced up and down. I'm not looking at that. Scholars related to this look at particularly the experience of the communication and how communication is completed as a ritual. So yes, I can receive my television through my computer, and you can receive your television through a television screen. However, a ritualistic perspective will look at communication as a deeper process than how we transmit it, but look at the ritual that is created around it. So the family gathering around the television on Saturday night to watch a movie together is the ritual of communication. They're being communicated a mediated message, but what is that ritual telling us about that family? What is it that we are creating about shared meaning with one another through a communicative experience? Communication is an experience with another completed as part of a ritual within our everyday life. And that's what ritualistic communication considers. It doesn't look at how it's transmitted or what it takes to get the communication to the receiver, but it looks at how are we sharing meaning with one another, how are we creating culture through communication, and how is this being completed as part of a ritual and a communicative experience rather than a transaction. This is often described as true communication is being an inner experience with one another. Carey, a noted scholar in looking at the views, he developed both the transmission view and the ritualistic view of communication, found through his explorations and scholarly ideas that the transmission model fell short. He contended that we gather oftentimes more information from the ritual or the experience of communication rather than considering the transmission of the communication itself. This has been pontificated through many different ways and many different methods throughout time and throughout society. Walter Ong, a noted historian of communication, has told us that communication takes place within a community and shapes the culture of a community in many different aspects. Humans have lived in oral cultures for centuries and are now entering a new second orality. And this whole idea of looking at the ritual of communication tells us that it means more of what's taking place within our communication and how we're sharing meaning and culture than what we're actually communicating to one another. And so I just wanted to point some of those things out. When we're working to build community, we're not really looking at and caring about the transmission and what we're doing to get people to engage. We're looking at the engagement. And what are we doing in that? Humans are homoliturgical in nature. We're designed to worship or commune with one another. Jamie Smith, a noted theologian and communication scholar, tells us that we are designed and we're built to worship. If we're not going to worship God or Christ, we're going to worship something. We're designed. So with that, if we are designed to commune and communicate and worship God, then it should be about the ritual or the meaning of what that communication is in everyday life and atmospheres. So I just wanted to share that with you as we're starting to get deeper into our blog posts, looking at how we can communicate differently with one another, engage with our audience in an effective way, and be effective really in our engagement online. We are reading chapter 5 this week. We're watching a video on media messages. We're completing the discussion board number 5 on Friday, along with reply post on Sunday. Blog assignment number 4 is due on Sunday with blog analysis number 2. If you have any questions, let me know. I look forward to interacting with you this week, and I pray you all have a blessed week. If you need anything, I am more than willing to meet. Just reach out. God bless.